Tell them the Night Stalker was here. Those were the words left behind at a crime scene in August 1985. A message, a warning, a signature from someone who wanted the world to know his name. Maria Hernandez stood face to face with him, watched as he raised his weapon, and somehow survived. Across Los Angeles, 13 families weren't as fortunate. Their doors were locked, their windows closed against the summer heat. None of it mattered. He came anyway, and for 14 months, an entire city held its breath, wondering, would tonight be the night he chose their street, their home, their family? No one knew it yet. But the real nightmare was only just beginning. Gil Carrillo was 34 years old and the youngest detective in the LA County Sheriff's Homicide Squad. On March 17, 1985, he got a call. 2 women attacked in Rosemead, one alive, one dead. Maria Hernandez, 22 years old, was shaking when Carrillo arrived. She told him what happened. A thin man, all in black, appeared when she came home. He pointed a gun at her face. He fired. The keys in Maria's hand saved her life. The bullet hit the keys and bounced away. Her roommate, Dale Okazaki, 34, wasn't lucky. She heard the gunshot and hid behind the kitchen counter. When she looked up, the man shot her in the forehead. She died right there. Carrillo listened carefully to Maria's description. All black clothes. Thin. Hispanic man in his 20s. Dark eyes. Something about this reminded him of another case he'd worked recently. A young girl who was hurt and tied up. Same type of description and timing. Then another call came. Second shooting. Same night. Less than an hour later. In Monterey Park, just a few miles away, a woman named Veronica Yu was pulled from her car at a red light. The man shot her twice in the chest. She died before the ambulance reached the hospital. Carrillo looked at both cases. Same area, same time, same type of gun. The lab confirmed it. Both bullets came from a .22 caliber handgun. March 27th, 1985. 10 days later, Carrillo got another call. This time in Whittier, a nice neighborhood where crime was rare. Vincent and Maxine Zazzara were found dead in their home. The scene was terrible. Vincent, 64, was shot while he slept. Maxine, 44, was shot and stabbed many times. Outside, under a window, crime scene workers found shoe prints in the dirt. Big sneakers. Strange pattern. They made casts and took pictures. The ballistics report came back. Same gun used on the Zazzaras as in Rosemead. Same gun that ended Veronica Yu's life. Carrillo called a meeting with his bosses. One person did all 3, he told them. They didn't believe him. But Carrillo didn't back down. The gun and descriptions matched. The timing fit. One person was doing this. Frank Salerno listened to Carrillo's theory. Salerno had worked a famous case before, the Hillside Strangler, where 2 men took 10 lives. He knew that making assumptions could get people hurt. He'd learned to trust evidence, not guesses. Salerno looked at Carrillo's files. The connections were there. Small, but real. Together, they started a small task force. Most other cops thought they were wrong, but Salerno trusted what the evidence showed. They had no idea how bad things would get. April 15th, 1985. Monterey Park. William and Lillian Doy, both in their 60s, were attacked at home around 2 a.m. William was shot in the head while sleeping. Lillian was tied up with thumb cuffs and hurt, but left alive. When police arrived, they found something new. Pentagrams drawn on walls and on Lillian's body. Satanic symbols. This wasn't just random violence. There was meaning behind it. Dark beliefs. The crime scene team found another shoe print. Same weird pattern as the Zazzara house. Same size, Same shoe. May 14th, 1985. Monrovia. Two old sisters, both in their 80s, found beaten at home. One was attacked badly. More pentagrams. More satanic symbols. Another matching shoe print. The shoe evidence went to Jerry Burke, who worked in the sheriff's lab. He checked the casts against every shoe catalog they had. Same shoe at multiple crime scenes. Same size. But he couldn't figure out what brand it was. Then something lucky happened. A summer intern walked by Burke's desk, glanced at the cast, and said casually, "That's an Avia." She had a pair in her car. Perfect match. Burke called Avia headquarters in Portland, Oregon right away. The company's designer looked at the pattern and identified it immediately. It was an aerobic shoe they'd just started selling 4 months ago. They only made 1,300 pairs total. Only 6 pairs went to Los Angeles. Burke studied the bottom of the shoe carefully. Size 11.5. He called Avia again with a critical question. "Of those 6 pairs you sent to LA, how many were size 11.5? "1, they confirmed. Just 1 pair. 1 shoe. 1 size. 1 person in all of Los Angeles had these exact sneakers. Carrillo wasn't guessing anymore. The math proved it. 1 criminal was responsible for all these attacks. The attacks got faster as summer started. May 30th, Burbank. Carol Kyle, 42, was attacked while her 12-year-old son was tied up in another room. She survived by staying calm and talking to her attacker. June 27th, Arcadia. Patty Higgins, 28, found with her throat cut so deep she was nearly beheaded. July 2nd, Arcadia again. Mary Cannon, 75, beaten, stabbed, throat cut the same way. Then July 5th, Sierra Madre. The attack that shook even experienced detectives. Whitney Bennett, 16, was sleeping when the attacker came in through an unlocked door. He beat her with a tire iron. 20 strikes to the head. 42 separate cuts. Doctors needed 478 stitches to close the wounds. Against all odds, she survived. On a pink blanket near Whitney's bed, police found a shoe print. In blood. Same Avia pattern. Same size. The criminal had stepped on the blanket, leaving his signature behind once again. The newspapers learned about the case. They started calling him the Night Stalker. The name stuck. Fear spread through every neighborhood in the county. July 7th, 1985. 2 attacks the same night proved the perpetrator was speeding up. Sophie Dickman, 63, a psychiatric nurse, was attacked at home. She used her professional training, stayed calm, talked to him like a person, tried to connect with his humanity. It worked. He left her alive. That same night, just a few miles away, Joyce Nelson, 61, was beaten to death at home. Same attacker, different result. No one could predict who would live and who wouldn't. There seemed to be no logic to his choices. July 20th. The night that shocked everyone, even hardened investigators who thought they'd seen everything. Glendale. Max and Layla Kniding, both in their 60s, shot in their bed while sleeping. Then he drove to Sun Valley and broke into another house. He shot the husband, Bill Carnes, 3 times in the head. Attacked the wife, Inez Erickson, then turned his attention to their 8-year-old son. He made the whole family pray to Satan. Used their fear and terror like a game, like entertainment. Before leaving, he told Inez, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." The FBI's Behavioral Science Unit reviewed the case files. They said Carrillo and Salerno were wrong. Different weapons, guns, knives, heavy objects, tire irons. Different victim types: young, old, men, women, children. Different neighborhoods spread across a massive geographic area. Serial criminals didn't operate like this. They had patterns, preferences, consistent methods. But the evidence kept mounting. The shoe print appeared at scene after scene. Bullets matched when casings could be recovered. Survivors gave consistent descriptions of criminal. The FBI was wrong. Carrillo was right. One man was doing all of this. August 18th, 1985. San Francisco, 400 miles north of Los Angeles. Peter and Barbara Pan, both in their 60s, shot at home. Pentagrams on the bedroom wall. Jack the Knife, written in lipstick, same handwriting style as previous scenes. This shocked police across California. If he'd traveled this far, nowhere in the state was safe. San Francisco's mayor, Dianne Feinstein, held a news conference attempting to calm public panic. She revealed details about the investigation, how ballistics linked the crimes across California, and most critically, the unique Avia shoe print being used to connect cases. Detectives were furious. Now the criminal would know exactly what physical evidence connected him to the crimes. Just as they feared, the Avia shoe prints stopped appearing after Feinstein's announcement. But the revelation had one unintended positive consequence. When newspapers published photographs of jewelry stolen from the Pans, people recognized the items. A woman named Donna Myers contacted police. She knew a man named Rick from El Paso who'd given her a bracelet that looked exactly like the stolen jewelry. He fit the description perfectly. Tall, thin, bad teeth, foul smell, constantly talking about Satan and showing strange interests in dark things. Police ran the name through their systems. Richard Ramirez. They had a name. Now they needed solid proof to make an arrest that would stick. August 24th, 1985. Mission Viejo, Orange County. James Romero III, 13 years old, was working on his new birthday bike in the garage late at night. He couldn't sleep and wanted to clean his new gift. Around 2 a.m., he heard a car going very slowly down his street. Something about the way it moved felt wrong. Prowling. Searching. He looked up. Orange Toyota. Male. Driver. Scanning houses. For just a second, their eyes met through the windshield. James had a weird feeling in his gut. Something wasn't right. He memorized the license plate as the car slowly passed and turned the corner. 2 blocks away, minutes later, the driver broke into a house. He shot the man, Bill Carnes, 3 times in the head. Dragged the woman, Inez Erickson, from bed. Attacked her repeatedly. Made her swear love for Satan. Then he looked directly at her and said clearly, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." Inez survived. When police arrived, she gave a detailed description matching all the other survivor accounts. Then young James Romero came forward with the license plate number he'd memorized. Police traced the orange Toyota to Los Angeles, found it abandoned in a parking lot, processed it carefully for evidence. On the rearview mirror, 1 fingerprint remained. The fingerprint went through the system. Match found. Richard Ramirez, a petty criminal with prior arrests for auto theft and drug possession. Police pulled his complete file. Everything matched. Height, build, age, physical description. They had him. August 30th, 1985. Police released Ramirez's mugshot to every newspaper and television station in California. His face appeared on the front page of every paper in the state. Every news broadcast showed his photo. There was one problem. Ramirez wasn't in California. He'd traveled to Tucson, Arizona days earlier to visit his brother, completely unaware investigators had identified him. He had no television access where he was staying, no newspaper subscriptions, no idea his face was now the most recognizable in California. August 31st, he boarded a Greyhound bus back to Los Angeles, heading home. The bus arrived early morning. Ramirez stepped off onto the streets of Los Angeles and walked to a nearby convenience store on East First Street. He needed snacks for wherever he was heading next. He approached the counter with chips and soda. The cashier stared at him. Other customers stared. Whispers started spreading through the small store. Ramirez looked down at the counter. 4 different newspapers stacked there. Los Angeles Times, LA Herald Examiner, all showing the same image, his booking photo, his name in big, bold letters. Night Stalker identified. A woman behind him gasped loudly. El Matador, she said in Spanish, her voice shaking. The killer. Ramirez dropped his items and ran out the door. He ran down the street as fast as he could, across the busy Santa Ana freeway, dodging morning traffic. Horns honked, drivers swerved. He kept running, pure adrenaline pushing him forward. He spotted a woman getting into her car. He tried to pull her out, to steal the vehicle. She screamed and fought back hard. Neighbors heard the commotion and came outside. They'd all seen the newspapers that morning. They recognized him instantly. He ran again, desperately searching for escape. Tried another car. The driver recognized him, kicked him away, yelled for help at the top of his lungs. More neighbors emerged from their homes. They'd been scared for 14 months, terrified to sleep, afraid to open windows, living in constant fear. Now the man who caused all that fear was right there in front of them, running, alone, vulnerable. The community worked together without even planning it. Multiple residents gave chase. Through backyards, over fences, down alleys. Ramirez was fast, but he'd been running for blocks now. He was getting tired, slowing down. On Hubbard Street in East LA, the chase ended. Manuel de la Torre, a local resident, grabbed a metal fence post and struck Ramirez hard over the head. Others tackled him to the ground, holding him down. When police arrived minutes later, Ramirez was surrounded by an angry crowd of neighbors. Officers actually had to protect him from the mob. The Night Stalker, who'd terrorized millions, was now completely at the mercy of the very people he'd hunted for 14 months. At the police station, Carrillo and Salerno finally met Richard Ramirez face to face. He wasn't what they expected. Not wild-eyed or ranting. Calm. Intelligent. Well-spoken. He made eye contact, spoke clearly, showed no obvious signs of being mentally unstable or disconnected from reality. He knew about famous serial criminals throughout history. Ted Bundy, the Zodiac Killer, the Hillside Stranglers. He knew their methods, how they got caught, what mistakes they made. He'd studied crime extensively. He never confessed to anything. Instead, he talked about the Night Stalker in third person, like analyzing someone else's crimes, discussing them academically, like a case study. The detachment was deeply unsettling. Police searched his belongings thoroughly. At the bus station, they found luggage he checked. Inside, a revolver, ammunition including .22 caliber rounds, and various personal items. His fingerprints were all over everything. Ballistics matched the weapon to multiple crime scenes across Los Angeles and San Francisco. Fingerprints placed him in stolen vehicles. Survivors identified him and carefully conducted lineups with absolute certainty. The physical evidence against Richard Ramirez was overwhelming and undeniable. Ricardo Leyva Munoz. Ramirez was born February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. He was the youngest of 5 children born to Mexican immigrants. His father, Julian, worked for the Santa Fe Railroad. The family lived modestly, but wasn't desperately poor. From the outside, Richard's childhood looked relatively normal, but darker influences shaped him in profound ways. His older cousin Miguel was a Vietnam War veteran who showed young Richard disturbing photographs from the war. Terrible images of violence against Vietnamese civilians. Miguel bragged about his actions during the war, treating violence and cruelty like accomplishments to be proud of. When Richard was 13 years old, he witnessed Miguel shoot his wife Jessie in the face during a domestic argument. She died instantly. Instead of being traumatized or horrified, Richard seemed fascinated by what he'd seen. As a teenager, Ramirez experimented heavily with drugs: marijuana, LSD, cocaine. He developed a deep interest in Satanism and heavy metal music, particularly bands with dark themes. He dropped out of Jefferson High School and drifted to California in his early 20s. He lived in cheap hotels in Skid Row, the worst part of Los Angeles. He supported himself through burglary and petty theft. His crimes escalated gradually over time, first breaking into empty houses, then entering occupied homes while people slept, then eventually harming those people. By June 1984, Richard Ramirez had fully become the Night Stalker. The trial began in 1988 and lasted over a year, becoming one of the most expensive trials in Los Angeles history. Ramirez showed absolutely no remorse or regret. He drew pentagrams on his palm and displayed them prominently in court. He yelled about Satan during court proceedings. He smiled and even laughed at the grieving families of victims sitting in the gallery. The evidence presented was irrefutable and comprehensive. Fingerprints linking him to crime scenes, ballistics matching his weapon to multiple attacks, the distinctive shoe prints, eyewitness identifications, physical evidence from crime scenes directly matching his possessions. September 20th, 1989. After extensive deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on 13 counts of ending lives, 5 attempted instances of the same, 11 violent assaults, and 14 burglaries. The judge sentenced him to 19 separate death sentences, the maximum penalty California law allowed. When they read the verdict, Ramirez addressed reporters waiting outside. "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." Richard Ramirez never faced execution. California's lengthy appeals process meant he would have been in his 70s before the sentence was carried out. On June 7, 2013, Ramirez died from complications of B-cell lymphoma at Marin General Hospital in Green Bay, California. He was 53 years old. For survivors and victim families, his death brought limited closure. Whitney Bennett still carries physical and psychological scars decades later. Maria Hernandez still processes the trauma of that night. Families of Vincent and Maxine Zazara, Dale Okazaki, Veronica Yu, Patty Higgins, Mary Cannon, Joyce Nelson, Peter and Barbara Pan, Max and Layla Needing, and all the others live with permanent loss and grief that never fully heals. The Night Stalker case taught law enforcement something critically important. Don't ignore evidence just because it doesn't fit expected patterns or established theories. But the real heroes of this story were ordinary people doing extraordinary things. A 13-year-old boy who wrote down a license plate. A summer intern who happened to recognize a shoe brand. Neighbors who chased down evil when it ran desperately through their streets. Stay safe, stay alert, stay connected, and remember, you have far more power than you think when you stand with others and refuse to accept evil in your community. Share this story with others. Let people know that attention matters, that community matters, that ordinary people make the real difference when it counts most.